This visualization maps the corporate innovation lifecycle using Capgemini Research Institute data. On the left, a massive volume of pilot projects and initiatives. On the right, the severely restricted fraction achieving commercial scale. Generating ideas is mathematically the easiest part of the process. Organizations routinely conflate innovation with creativity. They invest heavily in brainstorming sessions and design sprints, assuming that a higher volume of raw ideas will naturally translate into market dominance. But raw ideation is inherently fluid and chaotic. Taking an idea and making it survive contact with the market requires rigid, highly structured operational execution. The true innovation value chain is not about having a good idea. It is the end-to-end transformation of an abstract concept into a fully commercialized, revenue-generating product. When leadership teams over-index on hiring creative talent but ignore the structural architecture required to build those ideas, they get zombie projects, initiatives that consume capital and talent but never actually ship. Sustained, repeatable innovation is an engineered organizational capability. It demands a highly specialized form of leadership designed to force commercialization. To survive in a highly volatile market, organizations must stop treating innovation as a cultural accident. They have to build an industrial-grade implementation machine. Otherwise, they are simply funding expensive corporate hobbies. Relying on random brainstorming leaves a company exposed. A reliable pipeline begins with systematic opportunity identification, building a mechanism to scan the environment for signals. Management theorist Peter Drucker argued that innovation should never depend on a flash of brilliance. He identified that viable opportunities actually follow predictable, observable patterns. We can visualize this as an organizational radar. Instead of waiting for inspiration, this framework actively monitors 7 distinct domains for friction and disruption. The first signals come from internal friction. The radar pings when it detects an unexpected success or failure, an incongruity between expectations and reality, or a broken process that employees are constantly working around. The second set scans the external perimeter. Here, the system tracks structural shifts in an industry, shifting demographics, changes in public perception, and the sudden emergence of new technological knowledge. This system captures qualitative environmental noise, a customer complaint, a demographic dip, a supply chain bottleneck, and converts it into actionable data. Spotting the signal is only the first step. Moving that signal through the organization to create a marketable solution forces an executive team to navigate an operational paradox. By systemizing this scan, the executive team removes luck from the equation. They guarantee a continuous, data-driven pipeline of viable opportunities. Taking an idea from that radar and putting it into the market requires 2 opposing environments. This matrix illustrates the biphasic nature of the pipeline. The front end is the exploration zone. The back end is the exploitation zone. The exploration phase demands divergent thinking. It requires a flat hierarchy, where high variance and frequent errors are expected and protected. Leaders deploy opening behaviors, giving teams autonomy without immediate ROI demands. But commercialization requires the exact opposite. The exploitation phase demands convergent thinking, ruthless efficiency, and strict project management. Leaders must use closing behaviors, enforcing rules, and demanding commercial viability. A standard leadership style cannot navigate this. Traits motivating a team to generate novel ideas will actively hinder hitting strict production deadlines. Strategy researchers refer to the solution as ambidextrous leadership. It is the meta-skill of intuitively toggling between contradictory states based on the project's phase. During early prototyping, the ambidextrous leader acts as a shield, actively encouraging risk-taking and suspending traditional performance metrics. When the prototype proves viable, that same leader flips the switch. They take corrective action, end the iteration loop, and force locking in a final design. Organizations mandate this transition by forming tiger teams. These cross-functional units are pulled from different departments and structurally isolated from the traditional corporate hierarchy. A senior leader is given total control over this unit's resources and performance evaluations. It simulates a high-pressure internal startup, purpose-built to bypass bureaucratic friction and force implementation. Ambidextrous leadership protects nascent ideas from being crushed by the operational core, while simultaneously forcing creative teams to actually ship products. Managing individual projects is only half the equation. executives must manage the deployment of organizational capital. Looking at this matrix, corporate innovation is plotted as a rigorously managed financial portfolio, tracking risk against the time horizon. To ensure sustained growth, highly effective organizations balance this portfolio using a 70-20-10 strategic allocation framework. 70% of resources are dedicated to the core. These are low-risk initiatives aimed at operational excellence and incremental improvements within existing markets, expected to yield returns in 6 to 18 months. 20% is allocated to adjacent innovation. These are medium-risk projects that leverage existing capabilities to expand into new neighboring markets over a 1 to 3 year horizon. The final 10% is reserved for transformational initiatives. These are high-risk, high-reward bets focused on creating entirely new business models that may take 5 years or more to mature. When a portfolio is misaligned, short-term operational pressures inevitably cannibalize the transformational budget. The organization hits quarterly targets but sacrifices its future market position. This framework acts as a ruthless strategic filter. It ensures execution capabilities focus entirely on projects aligned with the company's long-term competitive positioning. Even with the right capital allocation, mature companies often trigger a classic trap. They apply tight accounting controls to early-stage exploration. Evaluating a nascent, highly experimental project using standard corporate metrics like EBITDA or early profit margins will mathematically guarantee that the project is terminated. This dashboard illustrates the required solution, a dual measurement framework based on project maturity. In the exploration phase, financial returns are irrelevant. The scorecard tracks validation speed, customer engagement, and learning from pivot cycles. In the growth phase, the rules revert. The scorecard shifts back to tracking unit economics, resource scalability, and hard market traction. The primary responsibility of the Ambidextrous leader is knowing the exact moment to transition a team from the exploration scorecard to the growth scorecard. Applying stage-appropriate metrics creates a protective shield. It allows fragile innovations the necessary runway to iterate until they possess robust unit economics. When we zoom out from the individual frameworks, the complete operational architecture becomes clear. The map integrates all the components. Drucker's radar continuously identifies the signals. The biphasic pipeline manages the workflow. Ambidextrous leaders toggle the environments, and the 70-20-10 framework allocates the capital. Modern, future-ready organizations view innovation as a repeatable organizational science, not an art form. A follower organization waits for a lightning strike of inspiration. A leader organization engineers predictability. Generating ideas is a commodity. The true bottleneck is, and always has been, implementation. The ultimate competitive advantage belongs exclusively to organizations that master the back end of this process, the structural ability to systematically force commercialization. Creative ideas without execution are merely illusions. It is systematized, relentless execution that dictates market dominance and disrupts industries.